It's important that they know that everybody makes mistakes and that mistakes are not life and death. I thought that was a really crushing experience. I had no advice. I didn't ask for help when I needed it. I did things without any guidance whatsoever. This time, though, I had the guardrails of having somebody who was a really sound business mind, who was able to have some hard conversations with me, ask me the hard questions, encourage me to charge correctly, be better at process, have good systems, and this time around, I've done a really good job.
Welcome to another episode of Success with Purpose, where we help mentor you into becoming a more successful version of yourself. We do this through giving you access to mentors you typically would never have the opportunity to connect with. We explore their journeys, their experiences, their life-changing events, their fields of expertise, and most importantly, their purpose. My name is Harry Goldberg, husband to an incredible woman, father of 2 amazing daughters, host, interviewer, and interrogator of this podcast. And now, just before we learn from yet another exceptional guest, if you find value from these conversations, please make sure to like and subscribe below, leave a review. It really does make a difference. And of course, share it with someone else who's going to find value. Now, listen in, pay attention, take some notes, enjoy. Let's begin. Tina Comrie, welcome.
Thanks, Harry. Nice to be here. Nice to join you after such a long time.
For our listeners, your career's always been focused on marketing. So since 2006, you've been editor and GM, co-founder for a boutique fashion agency, marketing agency, head of social media for, I think it was 70 brands at NZME. And for the last 3 years, which is the part I'm most curious about, you've founded and been building up a very impressive attention agency. And no, there's no coincidence for the listeners. Tina's husband, Josh Comrie, has also been on 2 episodes of Success with Purpose. So I've got the whole family now. All right, so I'm excited for this conversation, and I'm excited to dive in and look into your journey. Before we go there, how do you define success?
That is a very good question, Harry, and it's so wide-ranging. And I did put quite a bit of thought into how I would best answer that, because I do consider what that means to me quite frequently. And I think the answer is that success for me is fluid. Sometimes success is getting through the day and being joyful at the end of the day. Sometimes success means a much more holistic and broad feeling of I've got all elements of my life in kind of harmony or balance. So that being my physical well-being, my mental well-being, being a good wife, friend, sister, cousin, you name it. So it's balance. And sometimes success is I got out of bed. If I also can add, I guess success is measured against the person that I am today versus some other distant past version of Tina, and not against some other arbitrary measure that, might be measured in financial or any other means. So my success is really just about how I am doing in my life.
How you're doing in your life. Okay. And so then what type of measures do you have? Because as soon as I heard that, I'm thinking, okay, that's great. Like, that's pretty cool. It means you can feel successful every day if the standard is I got out of bed, which I think is really empowering, really powerful. And at the same time, you also have these big, ambitious, audacious goals that you keep working towards, and you're building up a company, and you're doing all of this other stuff. So I'm curious how you keep yourself accountable to continue to, because as I heard you say it, right, you basically said with a much lower tone and a different emphasis when you're saying sometimes it's getting out of bed versus sometimes more holistic. I'm looking at all the areas of my life and that it's all in harmony and everything's going great and I'm moving forward. I'm better than who I was in the past. And it sounds like that pulls you a lot more. But I'm really curious, how do you keep yourself moving towards the one which seems to energize you a lot more?
Quite frankly, I'm quite drawn to and driven by, as one of my key values, is joy. And so I think success in those ways means I need to be aligned with how I'm feeling with my values. Key one, of course, being joy, some others being love, empathy, kindness, And I think if I ever feel like I'm living out of whack or out of alignment with my values, then perhaps I'm not feeling as successful. So success is obviously quite closely aligned with values in that way too. And I'm a very emotional and quite tactile person, and I find it very easy to get in touch with how I'm feeling emotionally. So if I'm emotionally not feeling joyful, or if I'm not feeling loving, then I have a very quick reassessment of why that is. And sometimes I can easily identify why that is, and some other times, and I have gone a good year or two without really being able to identify why I don't feel that way. So sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's not to identify why I'm not feeling aligned with my values. So
Okay, so then if you're trying to determine if you're successful, it sounds like you're looking at over different time frames. It sounds like you're looking at this in, did I get out of bed? Or have I been able to live, like, have I been able to be joyful today? Right? It's like short of time frames. And then you're talking about how am I, like, how did I do this last year? How in balance am I over the last kind of few months, year, few years? And then who am I now compared to who I was in the past? And so it sounds like you look at different time frames. Are there, like, is that, do you look at all those different time frames every day, or you look at just the daily one every day and the other ones
that's a
once
really
year
good
or whatever
question,
it
and I
is?
think that I used to be a very in the right now kind of person, and really struggled to assess how my current behaviors or actions would impact on future Tina. And so I would just do whatever it took to be joyful or happy or satisfied that day. And that didn't always necessarily lead to the best decisions, as most people who, you can go out there and buy yourself an ice cream because you feel like an ice cream. But if you eat an ice cream 10 times a day, every day, you're going to not be the healthiest version of yourself.
But it tastes so good.
They do
Everyone
taste
loves
so
ice
good.
cream.
Yeah. Everyone loves ice cream. But nowadays, I'm much better at making decisions that will benefit future Tina. But I'm not perfect at that either. So I have become better over time at assessing what future and past states, what those actions and future decisions will have on my current state of joy.
Okay. So now we're talking about sacrificing current joy for future joy, right?
Yeah, I guess we are talking about that. Something I
Cool.
have literally railed against so hard sometimes, and been quite stroppy and petulant in the past about, I don't want to sacrifice current joy for future joy. And as I've got older, and as I've realized that sometimes not having that ice cream today will mean you can have a whole banana sundae in the future, I've become a lot better at that.
Okay. Do you have any practices that allow you to help do that more often or more consistently?
Yeah, I guess I have developed a set of practices that do help me to, I guess, align what my daily priorities are. And some of those priorities as a business owner, especially as a business owner, not all of those things are things that I want to do. In fact, a large number of them are things that I really don't want to do. But I know now that over time, if I do those daily practices, then they do lead to a much more easy, satisfied, I'm more on top of everything. And that means that every future day that I wake up, if I've done those things, then I'm more happy because I'm not living in a state of chaos. So the practices are definitely around having a really disciplined morning routine. And current today Tina would be scoffing at past Tina for saying that, because I never had a problem getting up or doing stuff in the morning. I always had a reasonable level of energy, and that's okay when you're youthful and you've got that youthful energy to get you out of bed, and you've got the spring in your step, and that's okay. But as you get a bit older and they're a bit warier, that becomes a little harder, I think. It certainly has for me. And so having that disciplined practice of a very specific wake up time every morning, having time to meditate, having time to walk the dog in nature. I have to have a daily dose of nature. Having time to work out in whatever form that might be. Sometimes when the body is broken, that might just mean having a stretch or, some very basic yoga. If it is filling up to it, then it might mean a full on workout or some Pilates or whatever. but then also having a very specific routine that I do, like my shower, my hair, my makeup, what I choose to wear in the morning. Quite specific about the order of those things as well. And then just knowing that stuff's all on autopilot now, and I don't have to make too many decisions in the morning.
So then do you find that since you've been doing that, you've been able to experience your definition of success more effectively, both on the shorter time frame, like at the end of the day or during the day, as well as on the longer term? Has that made a considerable difference?
Yeah, 100%. I think that was kind of what I was alluding to at the start, which was if I've had a successful morning start, I'm already set up for a successful day because I've ticked off a lot of the things to look after myself. You know, I've worked out, I've moved my body, I've had my contact with nature, and I've set up my day for success. It's very hard for things to go pear-shaped. Actually, that's a total lie. In business, anything could go pear-shaped. Anything could go pear-shaped in any particular day. But at the very least, I've looked after myself and I've turned up and I'm ready. So that is a totally successful start to the day.
Right. You're not leaving yourself to last. It's like paying your savings first. Like as soon as if someone gets a paycheck and they put money into savings before they start spending on everything else, you're taking care of yourself first.
Exactly. And it's so much easier to do that at the start of the day than at the end of the day when you're feeling really depleted, tired, scratchy, hungry, whatever. I just find that I just cannot do any of that stuff in the evening. I'm zapped. So knowing that I've done it in the morning is like a big tick. Success.
Yep. Success. Okay, cool. So starting your day with success already makes you feel more successful, and then most likely helps you make more decisions that are more aligned with the version of success that you actually want to live, right?
Yeah, totally.
Cool. Okay, let's dive into your journey. So you can start from wherever you want to. Some people would go back to their ancestors, which I found entertaining. But literally you can start, usually it's from kind of childhood or such. But share your journey. Like where have you come from and how did you get to where you are today?
That's a very big question.
Yeah.
I guess it's fair to say that my journey has been one of self-discovery over time. I had a really enjoyable upbringing in, I guess, middle-class New Zealand, born in Napier, raised between here and Napier, Auckland, quite a lot of flipping between those two because I was the child of a divorced parents, but very well loved. I was given a lot of really good opportunities in terms of my education, which I took heartily. I was an absolute self-confessed nerd at school. I loved reading, writing. I loved music. I was a real, I guess, a geeky kid. And I wouldn't say that I was outrageously popular or anything like that, but I just had a real natural inclination towards storytelling. So the words, the pictures, everything that I do now is definitely a natural inclination that I've had since I was a kid. And I did not, though, choose to go down the path of marketing. At high school, I went to a very small private boarding school where the options by the careers advisor, I say that in inverted careers advisor, were teacher, vet, doctor, accountant, nurse. That's all. That's all it was. That's all that you could do, or that was seemingly available to someone who was a kid growing up in the 90s. I'm 40 now, by the way, so that gives some context. So I had no idea that there was such a thing as a career in media, a career in creative arts industries, design, any of that kind of stuff. Not that I'm an artistic person, by the way. I can think about what looks good. I certainly cannot create stuff that looks good. That's why I hire people who are much better at that stuff than me. But anyway, I kind of naturally fell into the media industry. I was really good friends with a guy called Carl Thompson, who is still one of my best friends today. We've been friends for 20 odd years. And one of his friends was the owner and editor of Remix magazine, which is an independent fashion and lifestyle magazine. It actually started out as a free magazine that was given out in nightclubs, and they always had like a CD attached to the front. It was very much a rave culture title, and it very much evolved over time. And anyway, he said, "Oh, my buddy Tim needs a bookkeeper." And at that time, I had just graduated from university with an accounting degree. Would you believe? I don't believe it, because numbers are terrible for me. So anyway, I had graduated and I had gone for an interview at one of the big four accounting firms, and I had got the job. I'd been offered the job, and something inside me was like, "Ooh," an icky feeling, a feeling of don't want to do this, even though that would be successful, according to
You could have been
any.
partner by now, right?
I probably would be. I'd probably be miserable as well. I'd be doing something that wasn't really me. So anyway, I obviously listened to my intuition at that time and thought, you know what, I don't want to take that job because it just didn't feel right. So, but I needed a job. So I said, okay, cool. Introduce me to Tim. And next thing you know, the next day I was in there sorting out like 7 years worth of shoe boxes of receipts and reconciling accounts that hadn't been done for the longest time. And something about the environment and these people who are like writers and stylists and designers all coming together, and the creativity that was everywhere around, even though the office itself was like this very, I mean, as you can imagine, an independent magazine with very few means. But I just really liked the vibe. And within a few months, I was very much a part of that magazine. I was writing, I was doing some styling, I was just trying my hand at all of it. And I think within about a year, I was the editor. And it's just because I was really into every aspect of it. And I'd never known that was a career option for me. And so fast forward, I worked at Remix for 7 years as the editor. And that's because I just had a real passion for it. I loved it. And I seemed to be pretty good at it. So yeah, the outgoing editor left, and we tried a few other contract editors in between times. And there was just, I guess the boss felt like there was nobody better than me at the time. I was way too young for that job at the time. And I did a lot of very, very steep learning curve moments on that journey. And I'm really pleased that I learned all those aspects of it, because learning how to create a magazine on literally zero budget is really helpful for founding and growing a fledgling business as well. And yeah, so I was the editor of Remix for 7-ish, 8-ish years. And then I dabbled in another agency. I actually dabbled in setting up a social media agency at the time, but that would have been about 2009. And it was way too soon for people to really value social media as something they would pay for. They all just thought it was nice to have. Oh, it's people sharing pictures of their lunches on Instagram. Who cares about that? And because I'd gone so early on becoming a specialist in that social media space, that's really how I built the reputation that I have now, having gone really early, and too early, because I really struggled to be taken seriously in that space for quite a long time. And then all of a sudden, everyone was like, "Oh my God, this social media thing, it's really valuable. We need followers. We need everything. Who do we talk to?" And there was like 2 people, me and, one other person who's also done really well in the space here.
Cool. Okay, so just to rewind a little bit, you said that you had some really steep learning curves. Are you happy to share some of them, or like 1 or 2? This might be helpful to listeners if they can hear the mistake and then how you avoid it next time.
Yes. I happily share some of these stories with especially my junior staff now, because it's important that they know that everybody makes mistakes, and that mistakes they're not life and death. We're in media, we're in marketing. It's never life or death. Sure, it can be very expensive, and it can seem like the end of the world to somebody who's in this, especially in the junior phases of their career. But one of the biggest, earliest mistakes that I made was I signed off and let lorem ipsum go to print on the cover. For those of you who aren't designers or in the media space, lorem ipsum is that placeholder language that literally means nothing. It's just what graphic designers use to hold place for a headline.
It's like the thing when you try to set up a website and there's this lorem ipsum. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, correct.
You had that on the front cover, did you?
Yeah. Yeah,
Ah,
just in one little place, I'd missed completing it with a headline, and it had gone through like 7 or 8 different people. How on earth nobody else picked it up? But I was the final. The buck stopped with me, and I signed it off. Never mind all the other people that could have, should have, the people at the printers, the print rep, Tim, anybody else that worked at the magazine. Nobody else picked it up, but because I signed it off, it was definitely my mistake. And because it was a quarterly magazine, it was on shelves for 3 months. And every time I saw it in a newsstand or a supermarket, I was devastated. So embarrassing. It was there for the whole public, everyone to see. So yeah, that was a pretty big one. And that was just all about taking care of the details. That was the lesson in that.
yeah. Well, look, this actually kind of sounds that it reminds me of something which was spoken about in the past, which is this idea that when people are posting up on social media, or most things that they do in their life, when it suddenly comes onto the public forum, people feel like, oh no, like I've got to get this absolutely right. What if this goes viral? But there aren't that many things that actually go viral, right, on social media. And even if it does, well, great, it's gone viral with a mistake, but at least it's gone viral, which most people haven't been able to. Is that a similar lesson that you're sharing now as well?
Yeah, so I guess I can look at it from two ways. One being that something that goes viral digitally is easily fixable. I mean, you can pull it down, you can delete it, you can edit it, you can fix your mistakes online. Pre that, you could not. I had to live with my mistake in print for all to see for months and months. And, now we are in an agency environment where some clients sweat the details so hard about the finest little things, which in fact, almost nobody will pay attention to aside from you yourself. So there's a little bit of what we call Gitmo, which is good enough to move on, especially in the land of social media, where you really have to, if you're publishing something every day or several times a week, and there does need to be a level of, hey, just this is good enough to move on from this now. Don't sweat the details. But it still needs to be grammatically on point, not covered in lorem ipsum.
Yeah, look, that's really cool. Reminds me of, I like to draw connections between what different guests share. And one of our guests was a guy named Andre Menezes. He co-founded and is CEO of a plant-based chicken company. It's raised like 130 mil US of a Series A funding. So it's still a private company with 130 mil US of raisings, which is incredible. In his mindset, it's like, well, you got to get to a point where things are good enough. Like, yes, some things need to be exceptional. Like, you got to focus on that thing which needs to be exceptional, right? Like the taste of the chicken, tasting like the chicken other people want. That's the thing that people actually care about. No one cares about anything else. They care about, does it taste the same and does it have enough nutritional quality? It's like, if you really wanted to go extreme and you wanted to replicate chicken, then you got to also try and find ways to replicate feather and bone and blood, and no one wants that. So like, why are you even trying to create it? Just focus on the thing that you actually needs to be focused on, and everything else you can kind of just let fly by. Like, that's okay. It just needs to be good enough.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a deeper level than that is the need for perfection. And yep. I am a recovering perfectionist myself, and understand that I would get hung up on the smallest little details, especially after that incident, that I would get so hung up on everything being so perfect. But, there is a rule about, I actually don't know the name of the rule, but about 80% of the benefit is, oh God, now I'm hashing this.
I think it's the 80-20
but, the 80-20 rule where, that final 20% is not going to get you any further than the bulk of the 80%. Maybe you can help me with what that rule is.
Something along the lines of, once you've done 80% of the work, the final 20% is going to be a lot of effort for minimal reward.
Exactly.
So you got to choose those times where you're actually going to go to 100, because it's going to take away all the other stuff which you're able to do.
Exactly. And definitely have learnt that in the last 3 years of running a business, where you do just have to focus on, we call them quarterly priorities, and those things will go 100 on. And everything else, so long as it gets done and it's good and it's driving good results for clients and everyone seems to be relatively happy, some things are not going to be perfect, and I just have to accept that.
Yep. Yeah, cool. I mean, otherwise you could move some of those leaves or plants just a little bit behind you. It might just make it a little bit more perfect. Like you
Yeah,
could do that for
exactly.
hours, right? You could do it forever. All right. So you
Yeah.
tried to set up a social media agency in 2009. People didn't take it seriously. What happened then?
So that was my first experience of business failure. But I have to say, looking back, I thought that was a really crushing experience. However, now that I have the business that I have now and I have good advice, great team, everything is going relatively well for a business of our age and stage. What I now know is that I had no advice. I didn't ask for help when I needed it. I did things without any guidance whatsoever. And I'm not surprised it didn't succeed now, but at the time, I was very surprised. And so, yeah, I tried to set up this business, and the product market fit wasn't there for a start because it was too early. People didn't really appreciate or understand the value of having a great social media presence like they did just a few years later. I didn't have my pricing right. I didn't charge enough. I didn't collect money when it was due to me. And I was just all round too nice in my approach to both clients, staff, and I was the very last person that I should have been nice to, and I wasn't. And so that was a resounding failure for me. And I went back to the corporate world where I nursed my wounds, licked my wounds a little bit, kind of gathered my thoughts, rehoned my skills, and actually had a really, really great experience working for NZME, which is New Zealand's largest media company. I'm responsible for a huge stable of some of the biggest media brands in New Zealand, like including the New Zealand Herald, the big radio stations like the Hits, ZM, News Talk ZB, and a whole bunch of other digital brands. And that was where I really got my confidence back, and that, oh yeah, that's right, I am an expert. I do know what I'm talking about here. And it was also a really good experience I'd never been in a big corporate before. I'd only ever worked in small businesses, and understanding the machinations and the politics and, excuse my French, the bullshit that goes on in corporate land was very eye-opening as well. Absolutely nothing gets done in any timely fashion in a business like that. And it's because there's just so many people that you have to please and boxes you have to tick and paperwork and yada, yada, yada. I'm so pleased to be back on the small business side now where, things can be done on a dime. And as I decide them, they can happen. And it's really cool to be this agile and nimble. But, it was a good experience either way.
Yeah. No, I remember some of our conversations while you were in that space. Board meetings,
Yeah, I
and
was
trying to get stuff done and nothing was happening, right?
correct. I think I had moved to Sydney I'd met Josh, and he was going to Sydney to expand his business over there. And he said, would you like to come? And I think we'd been dating for about 6 months at the time. And I was like, absolutely. When are we going? Didn't really think too much about what that would involve. And very luckily, I did quit. I resigned from my job at NZME, and I was very lucky that part of the business kept me on as a consultant. And that is that's the main thing that I worked on while I was over there for a year. And then good old COVID wrecking ball swung through our Sydney experience. And that saw us come home on the very last day that New Zealand had an open border for Kiwis to come home, and about 2 hours before they implemented the quarantine regime. So we're really stoked that we just squeaked home before having to become guinea pigs for that first round of quarantiners. And it was in those weeks, as we were all very much level 4 locked up, that the genesis of the attention agency happened. And, as we all know, the big old digital transformation that was COVID, businesses and people were forced to all of a sudden transact with, communicate with, open their digital shop doors to people online only. And so many businesses who had put off that investment for many years or kicked that can down the road, all of a sudden were like, oh my God, we urgently need to open an e-commerce store right now. Or, we need to get our socials sorted because we can only trade online. And all of a sudden my phone was literally popping off. So COVID for me was a very good springboard for the attention agency. So for my business, it was
Did
it
you
was a
did
good
you
thing.
already have did you already have the attention agency when all those inquiries started coming through, or did those inquiries lead to the attention agency?
Inquiries led to the attention agency. So I was just a consultant. I was consulting, and I very, very quickly reached my personal capacity. And so I'd been picking and choosing projects that I wanted to work on. And within a couple of days of coming back, I was already turning work away, even lots of brands and projects that I did want to work on. And Josh in the background, he was listening to me have these conversations and turning work down. And he said, this is definitely a pivotal moment for me. It was a conversation that was as simple as, hey, if you stop saying no to people, you could have a really good business. And I was like, okay, that's about as much thought as I put into starting a business. I just said, okay. Looking
Yeah,
back,
so
I
if you
should have
don't keep
probably
saying
thought
no to
about it a bit more.
people, yeah, so if you don't keep saying no to people, you're gonna have a good business. What were the steps from there? Like what did the conversation flow into?
Well, me being typically excited, I got very excited and immediately started thinking about the name and the brand. And oh my God, yes, we could do this and we could do that. And, Josh, with his background, I'm so grateful for Josh's background in growing businesses. He was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's just slow it down. Let's ever think about what type of business, how, what's our pricing going to look like? Where are we going to position ourselves? What type of clients you want, etc. And we made a very immediate hire. I had been working with a contractor, Lily Stellingworth, who we immediately hired on a full-time contract on day one. And she was amazing, and she is still here today, and she is now a shareholder as well, which is really cool. That was a great decision. She's absolutely amazing. And then from then on, it was kind of, again, a lot more new steep learning curves for me. This time, though, I had the guardrails of having somebody who was a really sound business mind, who was able to have some hard conversations with me, ask me the hard questions, encourage me to, charge correctly, be better at process, have good systems, all that kind of jazz. And this time around, done a really good job.
Cool. Okay, so your first hire actually became the chef, but then how did you end up going from team of 2 or team of 3, if you include Josh, to the size that you are today? Tell me a bit more about that journey.
Yeah, so Attention Agency is 3 years old now. We actually just celebrated our 3rd official birthday, just back in probably 6 weeks ago. And in year 1, it was myself and Lily, employee number 1, and very quickly hired 2 or 3 more because growth was outrageous. And at the end of year 1, it was just phenomenal growth, and I guess you could call it, I had the speed wobbles. Too much growth, not enough systems and processes to enable, seamless delivery of all that stuff. And I was certainly the wagon wheel. I was the point in the center of that wagon wheel, and the wheel broke. I had a really bad bout of shingles, which, if anybody knows, it's a viral disease that adults can get. If you've had chickenpox as a child, that virus lives on inside your body, and typically only comes out in much older people, over 65, or younger, very stressed people. And I was one of those people that worked myself to the point of having a viral breakdown, and it was really bad. My health was all of a sudden shot to pieces, and I couldn't work for a couple of weeks. And that was another really pivotal moment for me in facing some hard truths about, we need to structure this business in a way that isn't totally reliant on me for everything. And it just forced me to make those decisions. Number 1 was prioritizing my health. I couldn't just keep on, working the hours and having the level of stress that I had. So prioritizing my physical health had to become, top of my list. Secondly, I needed to restructure some things inside the business to enable, some better support, and to start thinking about my succession. I know it's really crazy to think about what is your succession plan only 1 year into having a small business. But again, this is where Josh's advice and counsel was really useful. He's really big on making sure that there is a succession plan, because a lot of small business owners find themselves 5-10 years into their business and like still stuck in that place of who else can run this ship without me. So we made that decision really early. We had a couple of promising young employees, Lily Stellingworth being one, Ryan McLernan being another. And I still have a lot of my team are still with me from that time as well, which is really cool. But we named Lily and Ryan as team leaders and divided the rest of the team up into squads, each reporting to them, which for them was a whole different story of their own personal development, because neither of them had led people either. So that was just one way of easing the burden on me, and also setting them up for future leadership in the business. And another year on from that decision is when we offered the opportunity for them to buy some shares as well, which they both did.
Awesome. Yeah, very cool. Not only do you challenge them and give them the opportunity, but then you also gave them the opportunity to be even more involved later on. That's really cool. Okay, so that was at the 1 year mark. You broke down, way too much stress. You had shiggles. It was just too much, and then you started focusing on succession. How long did it take for the business to get back on its feet after that happened?
A year, I'd say.
Yeah.
Mainly because...
So did the business just pause, or did it just not take on new clients, or what happened next?
Oh no, the business continued as always. So the nature of our business is that we have ongoing relationships with clients. We don't do one-off project work. So when you sign up as a customer of Attention Agency, you are with us for 12 months as a minimum commitment. And so we have monthly deliverables. We know that we've got to continuously deliver every month for all of our customers. So there is no stopping. The only thing that did kind of cease or stop at that time was not much new business, because that was me driving all of the new business. And to be honest, it was a little bit of a blessing and a curse, because blessing wise, we were still trying to find our feet around implementing better processes to enable, that sustainable growth that wasn't going to break the team and wasn't going to lead to things falling between the cracks and poor delivery for clients. So we were working on that really hard in that year. So no new business was a bit of a blessing, because it just gave us some breathing room to shore things up and do a better job with the business that we had. Curse, because we were at that weird age and stage of the business where we needed to invest and hire more people, but to do that, we need more revenue. So I decided, take a bit of hit on the bottom line and shore up the team by recruiting more. And that's kind of where we were at for that second year, was getting through that next little break through the clouds to that next level.
So the first year skyrocket far more than what you could have anticipated. It was so much which was going on, and you were stressed out. And then you ended up needing to go, okay, I can't even look up business, look after myself, let alone the business for a while. And then let's start recuperating. Let's start making sure we got the existing systems and everything kind of down pat. So it's kind of like stagnate growth and then go backwards a little bit as well, while reinvesting and investing in yourself as well as the business at the same time. And then
exactly.
And then what happened after, like in the third year?
Third year has been really feeling like we're a lot more secure, stable. We've got really good systems and processes in place now. Obviously, nothing is perfect. There's still the odd thing that pops up. We were like, hey, that is terrible. Why are we doing things that way? So inefficient, or, things, the odd thing does fall through the cracks, like any business. And so there's been a bit of just stabilization, which is good. And it has also allowed me to take some leave. I've been on holidays, which is amazing. Being able to, leave the business for a few weeks and things still run and everyone is still happy for the most part. And that has been that right there is an early success. Definitely a sign of success for me too, is being able to actually leave and things still run.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I like that. And that's leaving with Josh as well, who's one of your guardrails. So, well,
What's
much of
that?
the
Sorry,
time,
I
right?
didn't hear that.
And sorry, that's also leaving while with Josh, who's one of your guardrails as well. So in the beginning, it was kind of like the two of you taking care of everything, or him kind of in the background making sure that you're doing the right things to take care of everything, and then you're both off. So that's even more of a testament towards when you shut up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having this business operating well, me being happy, successful, all of those things are beneficial for Josh too, because we each have our own separate, goals in life. And one of those shared goals together is being able to go traveling a lot together. And for me to be able to do that, I obviously need to have a business that can run without me. So it's in Josh's interest to also support our efforts in making sure that the business is going well as well. So, and he's also a director and a shareholder too. So, it's also within his financial interests for that to happen too.
Marital interest and financial interest. It works. It works for everyone.
Yeah, the whole works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So that's kind of where you are today. I'm curious along this journey, like you mentioned, Josh, and he's someone who has helped and guided and mentored you along the way. And you mentioned, I think it was like with the tough questions and about the pricings and systems and what are you actually doing, who are you serving? Who else has guided you along the way? Who else have you looked up to for wisdom and kind of whose life philosophies you've taken on board?
People that have, I guess, inspired me or that I've looked up to haven't necessarily been in a formal role. I don't have any other mentors or any of those sorts of arrangements. I have had a bit of coaching here and there when I felt like I needed to get through a specific issue or a problem that I needed some independent advice. You are one of those people.
Yeah.
I have also got a really great circle of friends who, I guess, they say your vibe attracts your tribe. And very blessed to have a lot of people in my life who are also business owners, or if they're not business owners, they're in amazing, interesting, successful careers of their own. And they're just interesting people who have a lot on in their lives. And I can take a little bit of inspiration from a lot of them. And luckily, everyone's really open and available to chat. And sometimes, actually, it's a good point. Talk about my CFO, virtual CFO, Erica Amor. Well, actually, she's one of my best mates. She came on as our virtual CFO, and she has been really instrumental in offering really good advice. Very much understanding me as a person, as well as where I want to go with the business, has been really helpful. Because as you know, Harry, that, it's not just about the numbers in your business. It's about what your personal goals are and where you want to take things. So she understands that about me more than any other accountant that I could hire possibly could, which has been really helpful. And funnily enough, her and her partner, Will, got engaged and they got married 2 weeks after Josh and I. So we also share an anniversary month, which is kind of cool. And anyway, the two of them are both absolute powerhouses. Will himself, her husband, is an entrepreneur, the founder, CEO of Movio. Now the two of them are founder of Coupler app, who are the relationship app for couples, which actually I should share with you. It's very useful. Cool. And, they're doing the startup life working together. So there's a lot of crossover and similarities in terms of their relationship, how they work together. So oftentimes we can just talk about those experiences with each other. It's really helpful. Aside from that, about a year ago, I joined the Entrepreneurs Organization, EO, which Josh is also a member of. And actually, he was last outgoing president. He just finished his year of presidency just this week, in fact. And he encouraged me to get involved. I went into their accelerator program, which is for businesses that I think have under like a certain level of revenue. And while I did qualify to make it into the main EO, I did want to go into that structured program because I am still in what I consider to be the very early growth stages of this business. And I really wanted the structure and the guidance and the advice on everything from strategy to people to execution to cash flow and all that stuff. So I've had a year of really structured membership from the Entrepreneurs Organization, which has been super valuable as well. And that's an organization that is a global organization. It's not just here in New Zealand. And I can't rave about it enough. And that's been really helpful too, because obviously that network of people are all entrepreneurs. They've all been through some of the stuff that I'm going through, and in all sorts of sectors. And yeah, you can pick up the phone and anyone will talk to you about anything in that organization, which is really cool.
Okay, so you've had all kind of like this support throughout the journey. I'm curious about how your mindset has impacted the success of what you've done in business. So are you happy to share some of your life philosophies that empowered you? I mean, like, I'm sure you've faced more challenges than what you can possibly even recall, right? And throughout your journey. And I mean, based on the challenges which you're willing to share, both personal and business and financial, whatever. What are some of the problems you face, and what are some of the life philosophies that have basically empowered you to become more successful? Your definition of success, right? Joy, more joyous at the end of each day, and more balance and harmonious and aligned in your life.
I'd be very open about this. I think I really struggled with a mindset that was very self-limiting, especially at the outset of this business. I didn't even realize it. I wasn't even aware of it in myself until I had maybe one or two other people kind of point out that maybe I could have bigger dreams than what I had for myself, and that I was definitely putting the brakes on my own talent and ambition for some reason. And I had to dig into whatever that some reason was. Why did I not think that I was deserving of having a successful business or building wealth? Why did I not believe in any of those things, that those things were not for me? And I know that this is something that we talked about, Harry, a couple of years ago. And it's also something that was brought up for me in some of the other, I guess, personal development things that I've done along the way. So I went to a Tony Robbins event, which I went as +1 with Josh, and I literally was dragged kicking and screaming kind of thing. I really didn't want to go. I always thought that stuff was so happy, clappy, rainbows and fluffy bunnies rubbish. And I was so skeptical. And, you know, within 5 minutes of getting there, I was the one that was jumping up and down on the chairs, clapping, and being one of those, you know, fully into it, drunk the Kool-Aid people. And I think there's only one way to approach that sort of environment, and you have to get into it. Otherwise, you're just going to find it absolutely terrible. So, you know, I had a really good experience at that event and then subsequent Tony Robbins events. And what kept coming up for me was that I just didn't seem to think that I deserved to be wealthy or successful or to have a lot of, you know, joy in my life for some reason. So anyway, it took me a long time, by the way, to dig deep into why that was. And I did keep coming back to it, like over and over again. I would catch myself thinking I shouldn't charge that much for, like, you know, in really practical day-to-day terms, it would mean that I felt uncomfortable asking for a certain price for a set of services. And then I'd be like, why? It is going to cost that much. Why should I not charge that much? Is it because I believe that we're not worth that much? So I had to really confront a lot of those questions. The act of being in this business has forced me to confront my own self-limiting beliefs on so many occasions. And I can't say that there was any one light bulb moment. It was just over the course of every day of the last 3 years, having to face them all the time.
Yeah, okay. And then eventually it just simply changed.
Simply changed. And I have to say, I don't have that kind of really limiting belief anymore. I guess my new limits are bigger. I still have limits, but they are somehow bigger than what they were. You know, I had a real mental limit around sales. I think a lot of business owners who find themselves in the position of being the rainmaker, which, you know, maybe you're a subject matter expert like me and never had any training in sales, which most of us subject matter experts who go into business don't. And I never considered myself a salesperson. I never knew how to run a good sales process. I never knew how to convince and convert and all that kind of jazz. And I certainly didn't believe that I could ever land enterprise level clients or clients of a certain value or any of that kind of, you know, those things. And each time that I've managed to do that, I've unlocked some new level. It's kind of like a game, you know. I've unlocked some new level of help. Okay, turns out I can do that. I can win enterprise deals. I can charge 30 grand a month for something. I can, you know, I can. I can. Turns out I can.
Turns out I can. Cool. And so that's a philosophy that's clearly driving you. And what other philosophies have you adopted? So the one you clearly say is that you're worth more, like you're more deserving of success than what you thought you were. And another one is that you are capable to continue to increase your leverage within to challenge yourself. What else has shown up over the journey along the way?
I think a real driving philosophy for me is that it all does have to come back to one of my core values, which is joy. I have to derive joy from whatever it is that I'm doing. There may be tasks in a day that aren't that joyful, but if I can approach it with, once I've done this task, then I can go and, you know, do something that equates to joy, or even just the mere fact of getting it off my plate might be joyful. You know, bank reconciliation stuff, I don't find joyful, but once it's done, I'm happy that it's done for a month. Other things around the business are like that I create a sense of joy in my team and the things that we do as, I guess, little rituals that we have, like shared morning teas and cute little things that we do around the office, makes it a really joyful place to work. And so while there may be challenging deadlines or maybe I have to work late or whatever, it still is a joyful environment. And so for me, like a key philosophy there is that it's got to be fun, got to be joyful.
It'll be joyful. It'll be fun. Okay, cool. So when you've been sharing about these different philosophies that you have, a lot of it, especially talking about increasing your limits. I've been thinking about a particular analogy recently. I think it aligns really nicely. So I'm glad having this chat now. It's this idea that for those who remember how to drive manual cars, it's the idea that you need to be able to shift gears to be able to increase the capacity at the speed which you're going. When you're starting out, it makes sense to be in first gear. You've got to focus on kind of everything which you need to do, and you focus on the details, and you know that there are limits as to how fast you're able to go, and you're riding the clutch. Like it's all good. Like you're going nice and slowly, and it's okay. But then you start getting to a point, I know, 20, 30 kilometers per hour, and you're like, hang on, this is too fast for my first gear. I've got to switch to second gear. You get to second gear. But I see most people, they kind of like, they're in second gear and they get to their 80 or 90 kilometers per hour and they're spinning like crazy. Like they can still go that speed if they want to. They can't go any faster if they need to, but they can go that speed if they want to, but then their engine's going to burn out. They've got their revs right up to 6,000, 7,000, right? And it's just way too much. And they've got to learn to be able to shift to third gear and then shift to fourth gear. And there are some people who like especially some of like the really incredible people who have been on the podcast, like the Ben Jings and the Andre Menezes and those types of people, and the Josh Comries, who have just done so much, right? And they're at such a massive capacity, and they're in 6th, 10th, 20th gear or whatever it is, right? And you could only imagine what someone like Tony Robbins or Gary Vaynerchuk or whoever else on the main stage, and the Tim Ferrisses and the Brene Browns and all these people, you can only imagine how much they've increased their capacity to be able to get to where they are. And I just wanted to share that because I feel like it talks really well towards what you're sharing, right? Continue to increase your capacity, dig deeper, find out what's holding you back, and find a way to find that extra gear. Find the clutch that allows you to shift up to the extra gear, because you've got to be able to make those transitions, right?
Yes, such a good analogy. And yeah, you describe it as shifting gears. I described it as unlocking a new level. And I've seen it in myself, and I also see it in my team as well. You know, you do reach, like there's charts out there that float around the internet that show that growth is linear. It's not linear. It's in steps, and sometimes it's in curls, and sometimes it loops up and down, and but eventually the line does go up and out, and it is you increasing your capacity, increasing your skill set, and by doing all of those things, you can eventually handle bigger, gnarlier challenges with more ease and more comfort. And the next challenge that you can handle becomes less scary, less hairy, less draining, because you've handled it before. But until you've faced each one of those things, you don't know how, it's the fear of the unknown, which is quite draining and scary. But then, if you are like any one of those amazing humans who are now in stick number 10, then, you've faced those things before, and there's some familiarity and comfort with what they're dealing with, and they know. And so that knowing allows them to face things much more comfortably, I guess.
Discovering with that is that you start to associate the challenge with the joy that you might experience while you're going through the scary, very challenge that you're facing, or you associate the joy with what will come as a result of going through that scary, hairy challenge, right?
Yes. I've, some of the biggest challenges that we've faced, especially in the last couple of years, maybe it's been a mistake that's been made, or an unhappy client, or, a negotiation that hasn't necessarily gone as easily as what we wanted it to. And I always say to the team before we go into the meeting, remember, this is only going to hurt for an hour, and afterwards it'll be all over. And so just be ready to face the pain and it's the discomfort, it's the yuckiness, the ickiness of things that are happening at the moment. For somebody who doesn't like conflict, those things for me are really, really scary. And I just have to know that it's not going to last forever. It's only going to be half an hour or an hour, and we're going to resolve this thing. So just look to what the outcome is going to be very shortly. It'll all be over.
A few years back, a lot about this too shall pass. Like, if it's a great experience, great, you better savor it because this too shall pass. If it's a shitty experience, you better savor it as well, knowing that this too shall pass. Because learn whatever you can while you're in there. You can't get out, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Even those highs, the highs, they will also pass. The feeling of, today's the best day ever. Well, it's going to be the best day ever for that day, yes. And then something else will follow hot on its heels.
All right, so before your battery runs out, I still want to ask you a little bit more about your expertise as well. So with what you do at the attention agency, how do you actually get attention? Imagine it's a small business, many small business owners who might be listening to this, or people at like small, medium-sized businesses, and they're trying to grow their business or try and do things, or they're thinking of starting a side hustle and they want to get attention, right? They need people to see them and want to pay them money ultimately. How do you do that? What's the Tina crash course for this is how you get attention?
The Tina crash course is the very first thing is have a product or a service that really resolves some kind of pain, or really touches on something that people genuinely need. A lot of people who go out there to start a startup or a side hustle have thought about a problem that they're solving for themselves only, and don't know whether or not that's actually something that is viable for others that they genuinely want or will need to resolve a problem. So start with the product market fit. There's no point throwing money down into a big black hole of marketing without first knowing that other people will buy your product. So try and sell it, or get some customers initially from friends, family, whoever else, people that you might know in your network, and get some good feedback from them about what that product is like before you start your marketing journey. Number 2 is to definitely have a really good strategy. Really, really, really understand who your audience is, what channels they're on, and what messaging is going to get their attention. Because in today's day and age, as you know, we've got the attention of not even like, it's worse than goldfish level. You've got a fraction of a second to capture somebody's attention while they're scrolling. So we call it's got to be scroll stopping. You've got to have something visual. It has to be visual, and a message that is enough to just pause the thumb and get someone to pay attention to you on whatever relevant digital channel that might be for your product or service. It might be LinkedIn if you are in professional services, or, in a B2B business environment, or it could be TikTok if selling basically anything these days. In fact, even B2B, attention is to be found on TikTok, but it has to be a really compelling message, but with a visual that also captures attention. A big, bold headline, something that's going to make people go, whoa, what was that? And that's the very first step. You can't convert anybody, or you can't begin a conversation with someone without first getting their attention. Hence the name, the Attention Agency. That's what we specialize in.
Getting the attention. And then what's from there? Like what's ultimately the rest of that process? Because I'm sure there aren't just 2 steps.
So the rest of that process is keeping the attention, and very few people are going to make an immediate purchase of anything, whether it's a toothbrush or whether it's a software engineering service. There's definitely a decision-making process that every one of us goes through, no matter what kind of purchase it is. And there's all factors that might play in there, like, is it going to meet the needs of our business? What's the price like? Can I try it? I want a demo. Do we have the colors that I want? Is this going to make me look good? All of those things. There's such a convoluted, decision-making journey that we all go on. So our business is to also make sure that every single one of our customers is at each of those decision points with the right information that that potential customer or prospect might need at the time. So, for example, let's say that software engineering business, that time to make a decision could be a really long time. It could be, an investment worth millions for somebody to start engineering a software project. And so that decision is definitely not going to be made overnight. You have to nurture that prospect and every single person that they need to convince in their team over the course of a year with thought leadership, with ebooks, with business case support material, with videos that showcase the talent and authority and expertise of your staff. And they have to be on the channels that your prospect audience is hanging out. So on the likes of LinkedIn or by email, and just being there for every single day until they can make a decision, and just being there with consistency as well.
Okay, so that was a great conversation with Tina. It had to be cut short because her cable just charging her laptop ended up dying. So she wasn't able to maintain power as well as continue to talk to me. So I'll give a quick summary now, because there was some really cool insights in learning from Tina's story and journey, even though it was a short episode. Yeah, so she started saying that success isn't the amount of money which you make or the specific things that you achieve every day. It can literally be different definitions of success every day. She gave the examples of how sometimes just getting through the day being joyful, and sometimes it's more holistic and harmony and balance and all mental, physical, and just being better for everyone. And sometimes it's getting out of bed, and sometimes it's just making sure that you're better than who you were in the past. So she finds herself as very drawn towards and driven by joy, love, empathy, kindness, and she just needs to identify what she's feeling and why, and start to go deeper. And so she used to be very much in the now kind of person, or neglecting the future, having the ice cream. I don't think ice cream was the actual example, but that was the analogy we were using, at least. Ice cream can be great, but how much ice cream do you actually want to have right now to make yourself feel good right now versus what will result in more later? And so as a result of that, she started making much better decisions, as in what will benefit Tina in the future instead of what will just benefit Tina now. And so one of those things is she doesn't like necessarily having the routine in the morning, but she finds it sets itself up for success. So when you wake up, and when how much meditation you do, and when you exercise, and getting out into nature, and setting yourself up for success ultimately throughout the day. And so she had her journey. She ended up in one of her first roles as way too inexperienced and had some very steep learning curves. She gave a great example of it as well, of some of those mistakes that she was doing. And she just had a lot of passion towards it as well. In a print media, she had the complete wrong text, like the default text on the front cover. And the buck stopped with her. She was the editor. She needed to take responsibility for it, even though everyone else should have seen it as well. But she found that perfectionism will kill you. She said that she was a recovering perfectionist. And so she tried to set up a social media agency in 2009, but it wasn't meeting what the market actually wanted. No one actually cared about it at the time. But then when people needed advice, they came to her, but she wasn't charging the right amount. She ultimately hadn't developed herself enough, right? She said that she was too nice to everyone except for herself. And you can't be that nice in business all the time, at least if you want to be successful, right? You need to charge appropriately. You need to get paid when people promise that they're going to pay you. So she licked her wounds and she went to one of New Zealand's largest media agencies, which was NZME. She was working with 70 companies. She's like, oh, I am an expert. I do know what I'm actually doing here. But there's too much bureaucracy. This was actually the time when I was coaching her. It was a pretty terrible environment ultimately. And she ended up deciding to move to Sydney, and she kept the part of the business that she was working in, kept her on as a contractor. And then COVID happened, and then businesses needed proper online presence. So she decided, with all the personal development that she'd been doing, she decided that it's time to help businesses with setting up stuff online. And she was saying no to people a lot because there were too many projects to work on. She was saying people away. And her husband, Josh Comrie, who's also been on other episodes of the podcast, was in the background saying, if you keep saying no to people, like if you don't keep saying no to people, you'll probably have a really good business soon enough. So needed to take a step away from branding and focus on who the clients are, what's the positioning, what's the purpose. That hired very quickly, and that first hire, I think the name was Lily, is now actually a shareholder as well as one of their other early hires. Another team leader is also a shareholder, and kept hiring more. And by the end of year one, it was so much phenomenal growth. But Tina ended up with shingles. She literally overstressed and was unable to continue. She was the wagon wheel, and the wagon wheel broke, right? And she needed to structure the business better. So prioritized on physical health, better restructuring of the business, didn't take on any new business while kind of cementing and perfecting or refining, I think you could say, their systems and processes. And now in their third year, everything's much better. She's much better as a leader, but they also have other people who are in charge. And she's able to take holidays for a few weeks. She can go away, and the business still maintains itself, running really well. She shared quite a bit about the people who guided and mentored her along the journey. So her husband, Josh, the main one, some of the coaching she's received to get through some of the specific challenges that she was facing at the time. And then she's also kind of just built up a tribe. Some amazing friends who are exceptional in their careers and in their businesses and what they've done. And one of her closest friends is also their virtual CFO and really understands her as a person and whether she wants to get the business to go. And they're powerhouses as well. And they're joining enterprise organizations, so EO, entrepreneurs organization, and went through their Accelerate program. She keeps wanting to learn and continue to grow. And that comes down to her core life philosophies. Right? So it's like she struggles with self-limiting mindset. Maybe I can have bigger dreams. She didn't think that she was deserving of business, of wealth. She did a whole bunch of personal development, some Tony events, some coaching, all that kind of stuff. And the business and everything else forced a gradual shift of those beliefs that she had. And now she has this really core belief that you can increase your limits, that you can do it. You can derive joy from everything that you do, or at least from the outcomes of those things which you do. And you can create rituals around everything that you do to make your life more joyful and more impactful and more successful, ultimately. And then she gave her 3 steps to how you get attention. The first one is you got to make sure that you got the market fit, like you're actually solving people's needs. The second step is making sure that you have a really good strategy. So who you're talking to, how can you appeal to them? Right? How can you do scroll stopping, get them to stop their thumb and watch for another few seconds at least, rather than a fraction of a second it takes. And then the third one is keeping people's attention. Customers don't make decisions straight away. You've got to continue to engage them and keep bringing them in and keep their attention. So that was a really cool conversation. I'm curious what you think from the conversation. Leave your comments below or send me an email directly. I'm very open to that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you want to reach out to Tina, or if you want to check out what she's doing, just search The Attention Agency or search Tina Comrie on LinkedIn, probably the easiest place. And I'd encourage you to just find some things within this conversation that were really practical and really useful for you. Was there something which throughout the conversation, like, oh yeah, that was a really good point. I really appreciate that point. Well, if there was, then just take time to write it down in a note on your phone or physical paper, whatever it is, or send yourself a text or send someone else who you think is really, really, really valuable for, send that to them and share the key insight that you got from it. Because that will remind you to continue to enhance your life. It's great that you spend an hour or so listening to this conversation. Now let's make sure we convert that conversation into real results for you. Until next time, speak soon.